Hey, fallen angels, welcome back. You guys are the angels that have fallen to this channel. Um, Subscribe and like if you like, and subscribe if you're here watching. Even every once in a while, just subscribe just to help me raise my number up, you know. And I think I'm the first one to do it. Like I did it on my last video, but not as good. I have on the second window, I have girls twerking the whole video that I'm doing, you know, the reacting to this window, the TikToks. And you could thank my fiance for that because she gave me permission and she did it for me. So I am gratefully, you know, humbly pleased that she did that because I believe it'll help my channel grow because I am the first one to do that, I believe. So I've been a TikToker since forever, and I've never seen anybody do what I'm doing while they're working. So, you know, I hope you guys like it. I'm gonna start recording the videos right now.
Statue of Liberty. It's holding the torch of illumination, which is the Promethean torch of Freemasonry. And if you go to the Statue of Liberty, you'll see a bronze plaque inside saying that this was given to the government of America by the French Grand Orient Temple Masons. And it is a symbol of Grand Orient Freemasonry in America, the holder of the light. And that's exactly the same torch that is carried during the Olympics. On the back of the old dime in America, there was the fasci, which you look in the encyclopedia or dictionary and look at the word fascism, you'll see that the symbol for world fascism was a bundle of sticks with a hatchet head.
You see that on each side of the speaker's podium at Congress.
Oh, absolutely.
So they have the fasci on each side.
Absolutely, and it's also the symbol for the United States Senate is the fasci. But the point I want to make is that that was on the old dime. Now on the new dimes, you will see a torch instead of the old fasci, because fascism was used at one time to prepare the world for the New World Order. Now the New World Order is in place. That's why on the dollar bill it says Novus Ordo Seclorum is New Order of the World, but at the top of the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill is Annuit Coeptus, which in Latin means our enterprise or our project has been crowned with success.
If you are looking for the hidden knowledge,
That guy, I gotta remember I'm windowed. That guy that we just listened to, he's amazing, very smart. He knows the laws, the maritime laws, because the words that the English use over here in America, they mean other things. Human means monster. Your male and female, or he and him, two different things. It's amazing. I would listen to him more.
if you want to find out who runs the world, who controls the money, the politics, and almost every facet of life, this ebook will literally unveil that to you.
Listen, I'm telling y'all right now, I'm about to flip the
Flex, hold it.
Get
Hold
that
it,
shit
goddamn.
away from
Flex.
me. I'm about to flip out.
down.
I'm about to tear this coop up.
It's strange how a country that's 35 trillion in debt is giving me a credit score.
The public believes that
That's
there's
true.
somebody up
I don't
there
get that.
who's very powerful because they're rich and they control the media, etc. You know, and they think, oh, we don't have the control, so we can't do it. You know, and we have this negative, you know, all the time. But that's not what it is at all. They're not powerful because they're rich and they control the media. They're powerful, sadly enough, because they're aware, you know, and they're trying to keep other people ignorant, you know. If our awareness level get to the same level as they are, we outnumber them. So there's nothing they can do.
Who's
we win.
they? Well, whoever they are that kept the workers uneducated, that sent children down in the mines in the Industrial Revolution in England, who tried not to educate people.
True.
It was
What they're saying is true.
Yeah, well, the system, we're all part of the system in a way, and they includes us.
Very true stuff.
Please tell me all of you have seen the new released photos of 3i Atlas and the other spaceships that are currently right above, not to mention the mothership that's parked right beside the moon and all little spaceships that are just flying around. Please tell me you've seen all of those, because I've kind of jumped off of alien talk for a little bit because of rapture talk taking over, but the new photos that have been released of 3i Atlas. Now, mind you, you know there's a lot of people out there putting.
Let's talk about the passing of Princess Diana. The official narrative of what happened to Princess Diana that night has been debated for decades. The official narrative is that paparazzi followed Princess Diana into this tunnel and followed way too closely, causing her driver to lose control. What are the chances that Princess Diana maybe knew this was coming? In a note written before her passing, she talks about sitting at a desk and needing somebody to encourage her and keep her head held high. She would also go on to state, "This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous. My husband is planning an accident with my car, brake failure, etc." Whoa. I want you guys to keep in mind that there were allegedly 14 CCTV cameras that were available inside this tunnel. Yet somehow, someway, none of this footage has ever seen the light of day, and the official narrative is that these cameras were just out and they couldn't see anything through them. Ironically enough, the official narrative mentions nothing of this ambulance that was to pick her up and bring her to the hospital. The ambulance carrying Princess Diana took 110 minutes, about 1 hour and 50 minutes to reach the hospital. Other people have pointed out this picture of the Queen at Princess Diana's funeral where it looked...
I think there was a lot of stuff, a lot of foul play in the Princess Diana situation because they thought she was just a regular simp, a nobody, just a peasant, you know, the other royals. So I think there was foul play.
Looks like she might be smirking. Ironically enough, years and years ago, a British intelligence agent would spill a lot of beans. He happened to describe a very similar crash as to what happened to Diana, except that he had a different intended target. He just so happened to talk about a giant light that can be used by secret agents. The idea is that this giant light could be used to completely blind a driver's eyes and allow him to spin out and lose control. Many people have theorized for years that this may have been what actually happened to Diana. Comment below with any information I may have missed, and as always, wake up.
Bro, what is going on? Not only are China having to deal with tsunami warnings, but now Shanghai are evacuating 280,000 people because a powerful typhoon is approaching. They don't want us to see August. Sorry about that. So, on Wednesday morning, Typhoon Koumei made landfall on China's east coast, halting hundreds of flights and ferry services. They imposed speed limits on roads and railways, and they also triggered the second highest storm alert warning. And to make matters worse, the storm is now approaching Shanghai, China's most populated city, and is expected to make impact this evening. Fantastic.
John Wilkes Booth, but Booth is not his real last name. The real last name of John Wilkes Booth was John Wilkes Botha. B-O-T-H-A. P.W. Botha, South Africa, apartheid. So the Botha bloodline did not come out of South Africa. They came out of Spain, migrated to South Africa, created the paradigm of the apartheid system, P.W. Botha. John Wilkes Botha changed his name when his family, his mother was pregnant with him, and his family moved to the coast of Maryland shortly before his birth in 1838. So John Wilkes Botha, an actor, was contracted by Simon Wolf, who was lead counsel for the Anti-Defamation League.
Have time travelers left proof behind? Yeah, proof that they went to the past. Like this spark plug that was found encased in a 500,000-year-old rock. X-rayed and analyzed. Found in 1961, a rock with a spark plug inside of it, baby. Could a time traveler have purposely left that behind? And in the 500,000 years that followed, that spark plug got encased in a rock. You know, rocks don't just grow around stuff overnight.
Agreed.
I am so excited to bring this video to you. I've spent so much work on this. You will see that all of this is all my original thought and ideas, just like every single video is different. This video is called The Great Lakes, the Forgotten Grid, and the Slurry Sediment Deluge. Here we go. This is part 1, and this is called The Great Lakes and the Forgotten Grid. I just realized something, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. I've been staring at these old maps from the 1500s, and something is off. In the 1570s, you can already see Shilaga right where Chicago should be. You see cities, castles, settlements, but no Great Lakes. 1570. The inland seas we think have always been there just aren't. It's like they didn't exist yet. Now hold that thought, because here's where it gets wild. Out in Lake Michigan, there's a stone water intake crib. Mainstream says it was built in the late 1800s to bring water into the city. Late 1800s, all right? But think about it. How do you build a massive stone fortress 2 miles offshore, then dig 200 feet down through bedrock under a lake? You don't. The only way it makes sense is if that structure was already there before the water, which means the lake was filled afterward. And it gets stranger. Look at Hoover Dam. Before the reservoir was filled, you see the intake towers rising out of dry rock. Same exact blueprint. Build the structures, then flood the basin. So what if Lake Michigan and maybe all the Great Lakes were created the same way? Giant excavations, massive quarries dug out, then deliberately flooded to erase the evidence and repurpose them as reservoirs, capacitors in the planetary grid. The Great Lakes Excavation Tower. I need you to picture this in your mind. A tower standing in the middle of a dry basin, before there was ever a lake. Not a drilling rig, not a shovel crew, but a resonance machine. An ancient frequency machine, or engine. Ancient frequency engine. This tower doesn't cut stone the way we do with picks or dynamite. It sings to it. It sends out a resonance beam tuned to the natural fracture frequency of the rock below. Just like a wine glass can be shattered with sound, the bedrock itself begins to vibrate, crumble, and lose cohesion. Now here's where it gets wild. Once the rock is destabilized, you don't need dump trucks or carts. You bring in water. Rivers are diverted. Aquifers are tapped. Meltwater channels opened. The resonance field keeps the stone grains suspended and the water mixes into a flowing mud. In an instant, you've turned solid rock into slurry. Inside the tower is a cyclone chamber. The slurry is spun like a vortex, heavy minerals separated from fines. The heavies, the ores, the metals could be harvested. The fines, the silts and dust are pumped outward, some through flood channels that race across continents, some discharged into rivers that carry the slurry into oceans, and some shot upward. Cavitation plumes blasting rock flour into the sky, where winds spread it around the globe, later raining down as mud layers. That's how you explain the mud flood horizon, not as a random natural event, but as the spoil from planetary excavation distributed through engineered flood pulses and atmospheric injection. Now you might be asking, how do we know this is even possible? Because even today, we have echoes of this exact same technology. Sonic drilling rigs already use high-frequency vibrations to fracture rock instead of cutting it. Ultrasonic cavitation in water is used in medicine and industry. Microscopic bubbles collapsing with enough force to shatter metal and stone. Cyclone separators exist right now in mining. Spinning slurries to separate particles by weight, just like the spiral chamber drawn inside this tower. Hydraulic mining in the 1800s literally washed away mountains with high-pressure water, creating instant slurry and massive floods of sediment. And atmospheric injection is nothing new. Modern geoengineering already sprays particulates into the sky to settle later across the earth. And I want to give you an idea. When I'm talking about the size of this thing, I'm saying something like an entire size of a city thing, all right? I mean, I'm talking big. I'm talking big. So you see what's happening here? We still use pieces of this technology. But in the ancient world, it wasn't fragmented like it is today. It was unified. One tower, one system capable of excavating entire inland seas like the Great Lakes, processing the spoil and redistributing it worldwide. This is why the tower looks the way it does in the diagram. The beams show resonance, the spirals show the cyclone chamber, the arrows show the slurry flood routes, and the plume, that's the global reset, the engineered injection that made sure the mud didn't stay local. And it isn't just the Great Lakes. Look west to California. For more than a century, maps like Nicholas Sanson's La Nova Mexique in 1657 and Venancio Corneli's 1681 globes show California as a full island, separated from the mainland by a wide canal up here at the top, see? Even into the mid-1700s, cartographers like Jacques-Nicolas Belin in 1744 still drew it that way. But by the 1780s and 1790s, something shifts. Maps like Alexander de Rimpel's English edition 1790 and the works of Father Kino stop showing California as an island. Instead, it's reattached by not by redrawing the whole coast, but by sealing just one narrow strip of land at the head of the Gulf. Think about what that means. Northern California was always part of the mainland. It was only the southern canal that created the island. And when that strip was filled, whether by natural deposition, seismic uplift, or what I believe a slurry deluge event, the canal closed. California didn't really change shape, it was corked. And here's the kicker. That same corridor is exactly where the San Andreas Fault runs today. I wonder why it's so unstable. If California was pulling away from the mainland, plugging that canal with unstable slurry would leave a scar that still grinds and shifts. That instability is what we now call the fault line. People are already starting to say it. The Great Lakes look like quarries. And when you start comparing, it makes too much sense. The Grand Canyon shows dig marks, like a strip mine. Mountains around the world have quarry scars, passed off as erosion. The Great Lakes, 5 perfect basins, side by side, tied into the Mississippi watershed. Looks less like glacial accidents and more like industrial scale excavation. But here's the problem. On that scale, no machine we know of today could have done it. You'd need excavators the size of cities. Or, this is what I think, resonance technology. Sonic fields, tools that could soften stone and scoop it like clay. That would explain why some ancient stoneworks look melted, bent, or poured into shape instead of carved. If the world trees really were cut down, trunks miles wide, then the same technology that could fell those would have no problem hollowing out the Great Lakes. These weren't machines like we imagine today with gears and pistons. They were something bigger, stranger, biomechanical titans, plasma-filled excavators, city ships that moved and mind at once. That's the kind of scale we're talking about. All right, we'll move to part 2. Hope you have a great night. Namaste.
Shit's getting weird.
God said a lot. He said a lot. It's a lot to think about too.
Part infinity.
Holy shit.
¿Cómo que no pasa nada, señor? ¿Cómo que no pasa nada si algo pase? For those of you that don't know what no pasa nada means, it just means like, nothing happened. With the chill, nothing happened. It's like, relax, right? Yeah. No, something happened. A fucking gator got on the boat. Almost got on the boat. And did you see the size of the gator's head? I can't be on a boat the size of the animal that's in the water. No gracias. No gracias. If that gator would have tipped that boat over, one of them ladies would have easily, at minimum, one of them would have got snapped up. Easy. It was coming on the boat to eat something, for sure. Como que no pasa nada. Si pase algo. Caquítele mis pantalones.
I want peace now. We can get peace now if we want it now. And the left wing talk about giving the power to the people. You know, anybody knows that the people have the power. All we have to do is awaken the power in the people. The people are unaware. It's like they're not educated to realize that they have power. They put the politicians in power. They vote for the local mayor. The people do it. But the system is so geared that everybody believes that just the father will fix everything. The father being the government. Government will fix everything. It is all government's fault. You know, shake your fist at the government. Well, we are the government. The people are the government, and the people have the power, but we must try and make them aware of this.
It has to be state approved, and it has to have that kind of aroma that makes it look and smell like something really Christian. And they would do things like this. They would get the foot in the door, and then they would say, this is not enough, we must go directly to the root of the problem. And do you know what the root of the problem is? The root of the problem is the alphabet itself. Certain letters, then certain words could not then be formed. And we would have this new, approved Christian alphabet with about 6 or 7 consonants in it. You wouldn't even be able to spell Jesus Christ with this new alphabet. Then they would go directly to the numbers that we all use when we're adjusting our little bank books and so forth. And they would say, there are 4 numbers here that are suggestive. There's one that looks like a hole, and there's another one that's sticking straight up. They've got to go. And those 2 that fit together, one that looks like it's upside down against the other one, which we can't say, they've got to go. So now you fix the alphabet and you fix the number system. Now we're going to work on the national bird. Now the eagle is okay, but he's an endangered species. We're going to go for the ostrich. The ostrich represents the way things really are. When the ostrich gets scared, it sticks its head in the ground, it sticks its ass up in the air, and it quakes a little bit. Okay? That'll be the new American national bird. Now the flag. The red is too racy, the blue is too deep, and the white is too hard to keep clean. We're going to do away with that. It's going to be beige. It doesn't offend anybody, and it looks great as wallpaper on a Marriott.
Let me tell you about some crazy history they didn't teach you in school. At George Washington's 1787 farewell party, guests went through 60 bottles of claret, 54 bottles of Madeira, 22 of porter, 8 of whiskey, 8 of hard cider, and 7 bowls of alcoholic punch. There were less than 50 people there. This is a colorized photo of Central Park in 1933 during the Great Depression in New York. A man in 1907 put tiny cameras on pigeons, and then these are the aerial shots of the city that he got. I mean, are people today even doing that? That's pretty creative. This is a housewife in 1947 posing with $12.50 of groceries for the week. This was for herself, her husband, her 2 kids, and the family cat. If that money was the same today, you'd be able to get like 1 thing from that picture. Apparently, the United States learned about Stalin's death for the first time when a 21-year-old Air Force staff sergeant intercepted a coded message from Russia, and that sergeant was Johnny.
Look, we have 46 chromosomes, right?
Right. Chimpanzees have 48.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They discovered that chromosome number 2 was taken out. They call it an artificial mutation. They mean geneticists. Fused together and 2 telomere caps put on, 1 telomere cap on each side. Who in the world took chromosome number 2 out, fused it together, and put telomere caps on it? And they say that it happened as an estimated 200,000 years ago, right at the time that the Sumerian tablets say they decided to make mankind to do the labor. There's no coincidence that the tablets are aligning with modern science. And this means that a couple things. The first thing, it means that we were genetically modified. The second thing that it means is the telomere caps limit our lifespan to about 120 years max, according to Harvard Science.
Yes, I believe everything he's saying because I told you I have a library of books about stuff on that. I'm a nerd, proud to be it. And the telomeres are just picture your shoelaces. Your shoelaces, and at the very end there's that plastic. So when you're putting them through the holes yourself, you know, it can go right through instead of being fraying. What happens is those telomeres, they get smaller and smaller, and after a while, they're gone. And then when that cell goes to reproduce, it reproduces defaultly, and then it mutates, and then it can't reproduce, and that's what aging is. And they have a drug now. They practice it on rats, I think, where it brings back telomeres at the end and reverses the age process, their brains, their inner organs, everything. So they're not far from doing some major breakthroughs.
Scientists. Now, in the Bible, what does it say? It says that my seed shall not abide in man forever. His years shall be 120. That was taken from the Sumerian tablets, even further back than that, thousands of years before the Bible was written. When Yahweh, aka Enlil, shows back up, sees the human beings building a tower into the heavens, copying a tower that they themselves had built, it pissed him off, and he said, whatever their hearts decide to do, they shall achieve it. My seed shall not abide in man, his years shall be 120. And then he did a genetic modification at that point, I believe, with the telomeres, and he spread mankind out around the planet, and he confused their languages. He had us speaking different languages, so we couldn't collaborate. Now we're in competition, no collaboration, divide and conquer.
And this is the Tower of Babel.
That's it. That's it, man.
So it was all done just to keep us from rising.
Yes. We were advancing too fast, and he had to slow us down. If we shorten their lifespan, then they won't have enough time. By the time they realize who they are and what power they have, they'll be dead. And see, that's what's happened to us.
I'm going to tell you a story.
Because if you follow the Bible, because I read the Bible, I know about pretty much all religions, at least to some extent. I study it because I have my own beliefs. But the Bible, in the beginning, everybody lived to 900 years, a little over 1,000, 700 years, 600 years, 800, and so forth. And then lesser and lesser. I believe that in the beginning we had more pure Anunnaki DNA in us, and we were just multiplying amongst ourselves, not back with the Anunnaki, and we were watering down our Anunnaki traits, you know what I mean, or DNA, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not a scientist, and our age started, coming down,
A story about humanity. And like any good story, we need to start at the beginning. A lot of people want to know what the beginning was like for humanity. So after channeling for 40 years, the information has often been asked, where did we come from? The way the story goes from the information gathered from the channeling is as follows. Many hundreds of thousands of years ago, the natural hominid that evolved upon the earth, that we often refer to as Homo erectus, existed, and at one point, the story goes, an extraterrestrial race visited the earth. They came to Earth to mine minerals that would help them create a balance on their planet. And in taking on this task, they began to realize that it was quite daunting and would take a long time, longer than they had. It was very important to balance out the weather on their planet with the minerals for a very, very short period of time. And so they needed help in order to do this. They began to look around and saw the natural hominids that had evolved here, who were close enough physically to the extraterrestrials that they thought perhaps if we can somehow train them to be of assistance in mining these minerals, the task will go faster. But being master geneticists, they felt that a way to accomplish this would be to take their own genetics and inject them into the hominids and create them to be a little bit more like the extraterrestrial race so they would be easier to train, so that they would be able to understand what the task was all about and help the extraterrestrials, who were called the Anu, or the Anunnaki. So they undertook a program of genetic alteration where they introduced their own genetics into Homo erectus and other early hominids and began to create what became us, Homo sapiens. A lot of people talk about the idea of evolution, and they talk about the idea of thinking that there must have been a kind of missing link between early hominids and Homo sapiens, because there seems to be an evolutionary jump that occurred where suddenly we gained much more brain power, much more brain capacity, and it hasn't yet been fully satisfactorily explained how that occurred. It may be possible that this so-called missing link is actually the extraterrestrials that came to Earth so long ago and injected their DNA into the early hominid in order to create Homo sapiens. As humans were created, then they began to act as a workforce to help accelerate the mining operations that were so important to the ETs and allowed them to accomplish their task within a timely manner. However, the idea is that because the ETs were so advanced, these early humans began to kind of look upon them as godlike beings, and they began to think of them as something far above humanity. Also, the ETs may have acted to keep the humans at a certain level. In many of the stories that exist in early documents, such as the Bible, these stories are told, but they have been sort of mythologized. And I think they do represent something a little bit more literal. When it talks about the idea, such as the Garden of Eden, and how the gods did not want humans to be as smart as...
Let me break this down for the Garden of Eden. They got in trouble, Adam and Eve. It's really the first successfully created male by the Anunnaki was Adamu. A-D-A-M-U. What a coincidence. I think all the books were taken from Sumerian and just, condensed and changed around a little bit for their own purposes. But a lot of it was, I forgot the word I'm thinking of, but the Garden of Eden, it says they ate from the tree of knowing, and they started to know they were naked and all this stuff, and they got kicked out. Now, if you make a genetic animal, like when a horse and a mule, a donkey, fucking make a mule, or a horse and mule fucking make a donkey, I forget which way it goes. That's a hybrid animal. It can't reproduce. No animals can reproduce that are hybrids. We were hybrids. Eating from tree of knowing. When you know your spouse, back then, talking, to know your spouse is to have sex. To have sex was only allowed if you were to reproduce. Back then, I'm talking about back then. So it was an algorithm, you know what I mean? And I could go on for days and days, but back to the video.
They are to know the things that they knew, and how eating from the tree of knowledge caused them to be expelled from the Garden of Eden, so to speak.
And to prove that the angels didn't have sex with us, the fallen angels, it was the Anunnakis because they made us. Enki said, "Let us make them in our image, in our likeness." 1,500 years before there was a Hebrew. I have the text that was really on, tablets, clay tablets. So we have the same look and essence. We look and act just like them, but they capped us as far as our intelligence. But obviously, we're able to have sex with them. Angels should be androgynous. They shouldn't. They should be like a Ken and Barbie doll. Like I can't see Ken and angels coming down. They're all men, and they all have penises, and they can come, and their cum has a sperm in it, and the sperm goes into a woman's egg and makes a giant. That don't sound right to me. I think the other way sounds more easier to believe.
This may be a metaphor for what actually happened in terms of humans seeing the gods and wanting to understand what the gods knew, what the ETs knew. But the ETs wanted to prevent that because then they would be like them and they would know the things they knew and they couldn't necessarily use them as labor anymore. They would want independence, as any thinking being probably does. So they curtailed their knowledge. They curtailed their ability perhaps even to learn that knowledge by not necessarily turning on certain markers in our DNA, and by leaving those markers off, preventing us from actually being able to learn too much of what the ETs knew and how they operated, so that we wouldn't become equal to them. So the idea is that eventually the extraterrestrials on the planet that these beings came from may have in fact learned about what these ETs had done in creating Homo sapiens. Now, as far as the story goes, it's possible that they have breached their own laws by doing this. It may not have been something that they were actually allowed to do in creating a sentient species. And so the story goes that they were recalled to their own planet, and that from that point forward, once Homo sapiens had been created, the ETs that had recalled the group that came to Earth knew that they couldn't just abandon mankind. They had to guide them from that point forward until they were assured that mankind could perhaps take care of themselves, could understand basic relationships and basic laws, and could create a society that was self-sustaining.
Good news today, as scientists are able to destroy 99% of cancer cells in the lab using only vibrating molecules that are vibrated with near-infrared light. So it's a non-invasive way to kill 99% of cancer cells, and I promise you the story on this one is very interesting. So, scientists have found a way to stimulate aminocyanine molecules with near-infrared light, causing them to vibrate and sync, and thus tearing apart the membranes of the cancer cells. You can see some images of how that works here. Basically, these are molecules that we already use in bioimaging as synthetic dyes. They're commonly used in low doses to detect a cancer, stable in water, and they attach themselves to the outside of cells, as you can see here. But when you stimulate them, you rip out this blue bar, which is the fancy molecule, thus destroying the cancer cell and killing it. And these blue bars, for the most part, only attach to cancer cells because that's what they are designed to do. So we talk about a lot about, they're kind of like molecular jackhammers. They talk about these different like Feringa-type motors and how all this can work. But at the end of the day, what you need to know is that the dye that they used to inject into your cells just to detect cancer in imaging is now also something that can be stimulated to destroy any of the cancer cells that it's attached to. And this can happen deep through skin with no damage.
In New York tonight.
That's amazing. We have some major breakthroughs medically, so I hope we keep going with that.
2 Delta airline planes collided on the tarmac of LaGuardia Airport. Yeah, they crashed into each other. Now, there's nothing reported of any injuries involved, and it happened on the ground, but still, there were people on these planes when they hit each other, and that's gotta freak you out no matter who you are. So about 10 p.m. local time there, the collision occurred at LaGuardia Airport on the taxiway, where the planes take off or land, you know, where they're just rolling around. And it was low speed, thank God. So, you know, like I said, nobody reported injured. But it's another in a list of strange shenanigans that are constantly these days. Yeah, constantly going on. We had part of an apartment building, also in New York, collapse today. It just seems like, and maybe it's just me, whenever I open up my phone and look at the news, there's another strange semi-catastrophe. Of course, if you live in this situation, it's definitely a catastrophe. But once again, in both of these events, thankfully, no one was reported injured. Okay, Booshkies, I just wanted to share this with you. Shabadoo!
Why is nobody talking about the fact that they just found a 12,000-year-old human statue at Göbekli Tepe? Guess I know I probably said that wrong, but anyways, this human statue, this life-size human statue, was found in the wall between the two largest stone circles, Enclosure D and Enclosure B. So Enclosure D is the largest and most elaborate with its twin T-pillars, and on one of the pillars there is a carving that looks like hands and maybe a belt. It looks like a godlike man, kind of. Enclosure B has a central pillar as well, and on it are carved foxes and other animals. Archaeologists have long believed that these pillars represent divine beings or cosmic forces. And then right betwixt them is a human-like statue. This is where it gets wild to me, because ancient architecture, walls were not just barriers. They were thresholds. They were liminal spaces. They marked the threshold between profane and sacred. Cultures around the world have practiced foundation sacrifices, where they would quite literally bury a trinket or an animal or human remains under the floor or in the walls of a space to consecrate it. So the placement of this statue suggests that it was not just art. It was an offering or a sacrifice meant to bind the two enclosures together. Think about it, two sacred circles, God pillars in the center of them, and then a lifelike statue is placed betwixt them. It's kind of like they were trying to say that the humanity is the bridge between worlds, like we are caught in the in-between and there's some kind of cosmic forces holding us here. Hear me out. That's not hunter-gatherer mindset. That's advanced symbolic thought, architecture, and myth. Hunter-gatherers didn't have time to worry about that kind of shit. All of this, let me remind you, was 12,000 years ago when we are told that humans were literally scraping by. This is the proof that we had the time to embed symbolic statues into temples. This was not just the rise of civilization. This was peak civilization that we are just now discovering. So if Göbekli Tepe's walls were built with lifelike statues inside of them, well, what else is the site hiding from us? And what are they trying to tell?
Okay, guys, major...
I got the book about Göbekli Tepe. That's how you say it. There's another Tepe that's near, that just means mound. That one's Göbekli. And, she's right about everything she says, but they stopped excavating. There's so much more in that area that can be excavated, and I think they're scared of being wrong and telling us the truth. We were advanced. We've had resets, so many resets, probably from natural disasters, from all disasters, from who knows what, because they're not letting us know nothing, but let me keep going.
Breaking news, there has just been a mass stabbing at a synagogue on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. Here's what we know. So this happened in the UK, in Manchester, right as large numbers of Jewish people attended synagogues around the country for Yom Kippur, which is their most sacred day. Now, eyewitnesses describe a man driving a car towards members of the public, and we're unclear on the specifics as to what happens from here, but 4 people have sustained injuries, both from vehicle and stab wounds. Videos online show bystanders filming this whole situation, saying things like he's got bombs strapped to his chest, and this is right as police opened fire on the man. Now, he is believed to be dead after this, but we are still unsure if those things strapped to his chest were real explosives or were just decoys. Now, police have declared Operation Plateau moments after first hearing about the incident, which, for anyone that doesn't know, is a set of responses to be carried out for large-scale incidents, including terrorist attacks. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is heading back to the UK early to hold an emergency meeting this afternoon, and he announced that additional police assets will be deployed at synagogues across the country after the attack in Manchester. As we know more, I'll keep you guys updated.
So if you'd walk into a hospital and you were feeling unwell in the late 1800s, they'd wrap you in linen sheets, give you water out of a copper cup, and they would give you royal jelly. And if you actually look back at documents from the 1800s, royal jelly was the original multivitamin. They would give this to the patients that came in feeling unwell, and within hours they would feel miraculously better because of how many nutrients were in the royal jelly that it was then feeding their body. And then combining this with the copper cup and the linen sheets, they'd overcome that illness in essentially hours. And that's actually one of the main reasons why you've probably never heard of royal jelly, because this was the original honey. It had over 10 times the nutrients regular honey had, and their profits didn't like that in the medical industry. So they pulled royal jelly out, completely hidden it, and then Rockefeller, as we know, switched the pharmaceutical industry from natural to then petroleum-based medication, which is now what you see everywhere in medicine cabinets, and doesn't actually heal the body like the royal jelly and linen sheet.
Inbred kings with giant chins? Ever heard of a chin so iconic it has its own name? Meet the Habsburg jaw, or as the Dutch call it, the centerbach. This is Charles V, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, a large area in the middle of Europe in the 16th century. Charles V was a member of the House of Habsburg, a powerful royal family that ruled over Europe for centuries. The Habsburgs refused to share their power with others and did everything they could to keep it in the family. So they married each other. A lot. Cousins, uncles, nieces, the whole royal buffet. A policy that led to crooked spines, missing testicles, and jawlines that could open cans. Emperor Charles V's underbite was so pronounced he had to wash his food down with beer. By the time we got to Charles II of Spain, centuries of close-kin marriage had taken a heavy toll. Charles was plagued by health problems, but most crucially, he was infertile. When he died childless in 1700, the Spanish Habsburg line came to an end, brought down not by war, but by their own bloodline.
Guys, this is so exciting. I knew I was onto something. This has to do with plasma physics and a mistake science made. Oh, and it also has to do with what I think is consciousness and life. Okay, so I'm writing a book on this. The link is in my bio. It's out next month, all about plasma and consciousness. And oh, of course this is coming out. Thank you. So basically, there's something called complex dusty plasmas. They train this AI on them, and I'll tell you why they probably did that. So dusty plasma is a type of plasma as an ionized gas. It is in the observable universe. There's solid, liquids, gas, and then plasma. Dusty complex plasma is like veering on an almost fourth dimensional plasma. It works in ways that I think expand beyond science into the metaphysical. This type of plasma can be found in space, but also recently they said on Earth, wildfires actually generate it. Basically, just so you know, a dusty plasma is a plasma containing little parts of dust. Dusty plasmas then become complex plasmas. Very similar behaviors to life. Why they probably did this study is because they copied Robert Temple, who spoke about this years ago in his book A New Science of Heaven, all about plasma. He talks about dusty complex plasmas, how they have DNA-like strands. There are these two big clouds in between L4 and L5, between the moon and the Earth, called the Korluski clouds. They're intelligent plasma clouds. And he talks about how they had filaments that acted like blood vessels. Dusty plasma self-organize. Oh, here it is. Their helical structures resemble DNA. Oh, and this is really cool. Like in the Gnostic test, for all of you who love mythology, the Pistis Sophia, they describe a light being emitted by the Father, described as being stronger than 10,000 suns. But the Father had no physical body, but was essentially described as a light ball. Something that has a lot of similarities with dusty complex plasmas, and even part of them are plasmoids, which we've all seen in the sky, those glowing things that are looking like they say hello to us, and they're randomly all over now. I feel like they're like the little dust bunny animals of the sky that are like what consciousness kind of comes here and says like, hello, remember your power. They're like our future ancestors. They're like consciousness almost riding these things like horses. And then some of them are just horses saying hello. I have a bunch of blogs linking the plasma to the divine feminine, which is also like Sophia in mythology. Basically, I know this sounds kind of weird, but it has receptive qualities that consciousness can insert itself into. It doesn't take on its qualities, because we women are independent. Funny enough, there's also an article in the astrobiology research paper called The Fourth Domain of Life about quantum physics of plasmoids and consciousness. You can Google it, it's an interesting read. They also basically have memory. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Here's the Sophia mythology if you want to screenshot it. Oh, and the behaviors that they found in the article in the AI, dusty complex plasma is influenced by density and temperature. Basically, our universe is alive. As it relates to consciousness, you'll have to find it in my book. I'm so sorry I did this to you. But if you're on TikTok, this has gone past 3 minutes and I can tell you. So basically the way dusty complex plasma works is a mix of plasma and consciousness. It is a mix of memory and sentience, and it also shows us how things can evolve and be created from like literally nothing in the invisible. It is like dusty complex plasma is like a fourth dimensional threshold or gateway for beyond the veil, beyond this reality. It's almost like the ocean, and then where the beach, this third dimensional reality is the beach, and then this is almost like the foam between the ocean and the land. And by studying dusty complex plasma and how it works, I think we'll actually learn more about consciousness and how it synergizes with plasma and dusty complex plasma to actually create our reality. And more than that, I believe, and I say in my book, there is a multi-dimensional plasma, and plasma is just a third dimensional aspect of it. As above, so below. If it makes up 99.9% of the universe, it'll probably make up 99.9% of the dream consciousness universe that we can't see. Similar to how you can't see or prove love. And I think by studying this, it will tell us more about that veiled reality, that living etheric plasma, or a living ether. I call it multidimensional plasma. I think it's way better because plasma shows it's more feminine. Even though I know her is also feminine. It all points to feminine. But masculine is, the consciousness is masculine, so we both get one, okay? But basically, what this is showing is that plasma is incredibly important for the future. Dusty complex plasma is very interesting, and I talk way more about it in my book. And by learning how dusty complex plasma works, I think we're going to learn more about how our consciousness works with this reality made of this multidimensional plasma.
Happy October, let's talk tombs. Because this one is the perfect blend of archaeology and mythology. And my name is Dr. Tendra Kellenberger, and I bring the ancient world to you. If you recall, this is the famed tomb of Cerberus, named not because this is where the remains of the Hound of Hades lies, but because of this beautifully preserved fresco. So back in 2023, archaeologists who were working in the San Giuliano region outside Naples, well, they were doing excavations as archaeologists do, where they found a tufa stone slab in front of an entrance. Now, when archaeologists entered into the tomb, they were completely blown away because this tomb had been closed for over 2,000 years. And with updates from last year, they peeked inside the sarcophagus to get DNA remains for testing and found that the individual in the sarcophagus had a burial shroud that had been mineralized. And under microscopic analysis, herbs were identified, such as wormwood and goosefoot, which has led archaeologists and scholars to suspect that these herbs played a role in funerary rites and rituals, as they are known to slow down the decomposition of a body. But of course, we love tombs here. But we also love art. And this tomb is covered with mythological scenes, including this pair of ichthyocentaurs, who may actually be Aphros and Bythos, two sea gods, and of course the star of the show, that captures a Greek hero's final task, forever immortalized in fresco. With the mythology of Heracles, as an archaeologist and art historian, there may be more here than meets the eye. And yes, we're digging deeper on the Dirt Diaries podcast. Welcome to October with Tales of the Underworld, the Tomb of Cerberus.
One of the greatest things I kept noticing in Egypt was the amount of blue lotus flowers on the wall. I couldn't believe my eyes. How is that possible? A plant that appears on every corner in every temple can actually not be talking about till it's discovered in every sense possible. It just doesn't make sense. How is it that there is blue lotus flowers on every tomb, in every temple, on every carving, on every wall, yet no one has gone deep enough into trying to figure out the importance, the magnitude of what this flower plays in ancient Egypt?
Not many people know this, but McGruff the crime dog was created because of the JFK assassination, and the story just gets way crazier from there. Most people of a certain age are familiar with McGruff the crime dog, a talking dog detective who was in a series of popular PSAs throughout the 80s and 90s and educated children.
I remember Take a Bite Out of Crime.
on how to take a bite out of crime. But what many people don't know is that McGruff the Crime Dog was created in direct response to the assassination of John F. Kennedy and many other high-profile assassinations, such as Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., that occurred in the 1960s. Caused a huge growth in fear amongst the public of crime, as well as lack of trust in the government, which expanded throughout the years until by the late 1970s, crime was listed as the top fear amongst the public in government surveys. Because of this, as well as the fact that Richard Nixon ran on a platform of being tough on crime in both of his presidential races, crime was on the mind of the American public in the 1970s. People were really scared, and they were starting to point the blame at the government for not doing something about it. So the government started investing heavily in a bunch of new crime prevention and awareness campaigns, councils, and organizations throughout the 1970s. And so in 1977, the government-funded National Crime Prevention Council tasked the Ad Council, which is a nonprofit advertising agency that's created basically every PSA you've ever seen in your life, with creating some kind of new campaign to message crime prevention to children. The FBI director at the time, Clarence Kelly, was an advisor on the campaign, and he said that they should do something teaching children how to be afraid of crime. But the Ad Council rejected this, saying that people were already afraid of crime and they would just ignore this. So instead, they hired the private advertising firm Dancer Fitzgerald Sample to come up with an idea. A copywriter at DFS named Jack Keel thought back on the success of Smokey Bear and said, why don't we just do something like that? And he came up with the idea of a crime-fighting talking dog. Although his original concept sketches were more like a little cutesy Snoopy-like dog, which everybody agreed was not the right direction. And so Jack Keel said, what if he was like a grizzled old detective type character, like Columbo, but a dog? And people really loved that idea. In fact, originally they tried to get Peter Falk to be the voice of McGruff, but that didn't end up working out, and Jack Keel himself ended up voicing the character. So Dancer Fitzgerald Sample and the Ad Council spent the next few years developing the campaign, but in 1979, the Attorney General, Benjamin Silivetti, found out about McGruff and freaked out, wondering why was the government spending millions of dollars on a talking dog? So he ordered the campaign to be shut down. But it was too late. The thing was already finished and they had already sent it out to media. So it ran and became massively popular. The campaign had a successful run in the 80s and then was retooled and relaunched in the 90s. And funny story, the actor who voiced McGruff in the 90s campaign was arrested in 2011 for possession of drugs and a massive arsenal of military-grade weapons and sentenced to 16 years in prison. So I guess he meant take a bite out of crime in a different way.
This is the only known picture of Pocahontas. Yes, she was a real person, and her life was so much more extraordinary than the Disney movie. Pocahontas was born around 1596 in what is today the state of Virginia. She was a member of the Powhatan people, a native society, and her father was the paramount chief, so he wielded a lot of power. Although her mother was no one special, her father had multiple wives. Certain wives were important, but her mother was not one of those wives. Pocahontas was her nickname, which meant little mischief or little mischievous one. Her birth name was Amanute. Now, John Smith was also a real person, and he came to Virginia in 1607 with other English settlers. He wasn't important when he arrived, although he was eventually elected as president of their little settlement. As far as how John Smith and Pocahontas met, John Smith went to try and trade food with the natives when the English ran out, and he had done this successfully in the past, although on this certain occasion he was taken captive by the natives, and this is how he was introduced to Pocahontas. While in captivity, Pocahontas was John Smith's tutor. She tried to teach him some of the native language, and proof of this is recorded in John Smith's notebook, which talks about their relationship. When John Smith was eventually released by the natives and returned home, he wrote and published about his experience with the natives. He wanted to make money by selling his writings. He wrote that the natives wanted to kill him, but a young girl stepped in and saved his life. Historians largely refute this story, especially because John Smith was an explorer and he had traveled to Asia and Africa before, and when he returned home, he wrote similar stories of young native women saving his life. There is no other record that this happened, and Pocahontas would have been a child when John Smith was taken hostage. Also, this interaction would have been counter to their culture. Pocahontas would not have been allowed to step in and make political decisions. So John Smith and Pocahontas did know each other, but they were just simply trying to teach each other their language. Pocahontas was kidnapped in 1613 on the Potomac River, and this was done at the request of the English king, who wanted the English settlers to kidnap young people that they believed could serve as hostages or negotiators between the natives and the English. She was held in captivity by the English for about a year, and throughout this whole ordeal, they attempted to convert her to Christianity, but she refused. Although while in captivity, she eventually married an English settler named John Rolfe, and it's believed that he was her English tutor. He offered to marry her as a way of making peace between the English and the natives, and Pocahontas' father also approved of this marriage. After she married John Rolfe, she took the baptismal name of Rebecca, and her marriage and conversion to Christianity was a way of sealing a political deal. They have a son named Thomas, and in 1616, the three of them sailed together from Virginia to London. This trip was really an attempt to show the English that the Virginia Company had success in the New World. This is when the drawing of Pocahontas is done, which was turned into an engraving, and she is shown in full English attire. This is kind of an enhanced version that shows her features a little better. Unfortunately, Pocahontas' story ends in tragedy because after being in London for about a year, her family decides to return home to Virginia. And as they're leaving England on the ship, Pocahontas becomes ill with some sort of lung ailment. She is taken off the ship and transferred to an inn in the town of Gravesend in England, and it is here that she passes away. She was about 21 or 22 years old, and her body is now buried in the town of Gravesend at St. George's Church.
Archaeologists have found two 1,600-year-old churches and a mural of Jesus in an Egyptian desert settlement. Interesting. So archaeologists have recently unearthed two churches in Egypt that are over 1,500 years old. Now, the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities said the churches were found at Karga Oasis in an ancient settlement roughly 350 miles southwest of Cairo. This site's known for its notable ancient Christian remains, including cemeteries and churches, and it's been inhabited since antiquity thanks to underground water sources. Now, what they found was the remains of an entire settlement at Karga Oasis. Multiple residential buildings made of mud brick were found, with some walls still retaining plaster. Now, this is the only picture the Egyptians will give us. I wish I could see the mural of Jesus. The team also uncovered ovens and large clay jars set into the ground for storing food. They also found inscribed pottery shards, vessels, glass, and stone pieces, and several burials. But the centerpiece of the excavation was the discovery of the two churches. Both structures date back to the early Coptic era, which was the beginning of Egypt's Christianity period, which began around 4th century AD. One church was a grand basilica made of mud brick with the remains of a large hall and 2 aisles. The second church, which was smaller, had a rectangular layout and was surrounded by the remains of 7 external columns. Now, beyond the churches, archaeologists also uncovered a remarkable mural of Jesus Christ healing a sick person, a very rare depiction of that time. Like I said before, no pictures of the mural were released, likely due to conservation reasons, but this settlement is basically the transition from paganism to Christianity. Now, before, this was the oldest known picture in Egypt of Jesus, which was between the 6th and 7th century. The mural they found is 200 years older. I think it's a monumental find. And honestly, I would just love it if the Egyptian government would just let us see this picture of Jesus. I'm sure people would love to.
Ključna loza iluminata je nastala kad su Anunnaki parili srpske žene. I nastali su Nefili. Rothschildi su direktna loza Nefila. I to vam niko od ovolikih doktora nauka, savjetnika, predsjednika, profesora raznih fakulteta neće reći. Ja sam se pitala danima kad sam to našla, zašto je to tako? Pa zato što su oni njihovi igrači ovde.
This happened live in front of thousands of viewers who witnessed it in real time. Two young men decided to explore an old abandoned house that neighbors had been speaking about with fear. During the early morning hours, they hear footsteps, screams, and mysterious noises coming from inside. Hyped up, the bows wanted to see for themselves. When they get there, they start their stream on the ground floor, but it's when they go up to the first floor when everything changed. Watch this. The camera barely manages to capture what appears to be a dark humanoid hurling towards them at high speed. It was so fast it literally passes through them and disappears. Seconds later, the same figure reappears hurling towards them again, this time making a sound. When they turn the camera around, all you see is a wall and a closed window, no doors, no possible exit. How did that entity move at such speed in absolute darkness towards them, pass through them, and disappear immediately?
I believe that. Wow. That is amazing. I would have shit myself. Holy shit.
In the 19th century, the baddies were running away with the circus, literally. At this point in time, the Victorian era was ending, the Wild West was happening, and the Gilded Age was happening. If you were a woman at this time, you had your choice between essentially either being a wife, a maid, or a teacher. And a lot of the girls just simply did not want to do any of that. They wanted freedom and adventure. So the circus. These were not just small tents. They were like traveling cities with hundreds of workers, multiple trains, exotic animals, and performers from all over the world. In most towns, the circus arriving was like the biggest event of the year. The circuses would blanket towns in these big, bright posters, not just for audiences, but also for recruits. The circus advertised a life of glamour, traveling, having your own money, having your own independence, being famous. And if you showed talent or uniqueness at your audition, you could even be hired on the spot. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a lot of women in poverty or in arranged marriages, and it was considered very scandalous. To be in the circus, you needed to be very athletic with skills in things like acrobatics, dance, and horseback riding. You needed to have stage presence and charisma. You needed to be fearless. You needed to be willing to travel and leave your family behind. And you needed to be willing to break social norms. One of the first female circus stars was named Lillian Leitzel. She was a German aerialist known for her fiery temper and her one-arm plunges, where she would whip herself around by one arm up to 100 times. She once said, "I want nothing but the best, and I will risk my life every night to give it." And sadly, she meant that literally, because one night the mechanism holding her trapeze broke and she fell over 30 feet to the ground, where she died later from injuries. Mae Worth, who was known for somersaulting on horseback, ran away with the circus as a teenager and became an international star. She retired safely in her 30s and lived in Sarasota, Florida until she died at the age of 84. Mabel Stark was one of the world's first tiger trainers. She went from being a nurse to performing with 18 tigers at once. She was mauled several times, one attack nearly killing her. She actually performed into her 60s, but was later fired from the circus, and she fell into such a bad financial situation that she unfortunately did die from suicide. So yeah, the circus was very dangerous and very scandalous for these women, but it made them the most famous women in the world, and it beat getting stuck in a small town with a husband named like Earl.
This 12-year-old was sawed in half because he didn't pay his friend back in a video game. 16-year-old Daniel Petrie had a history of violent outbursts which frightened his parents so badly that they sent him to different psychiatrists in Brazil, hoping that there was something to help their son. But Daniel hated doctors and he refused to talk. He acted out during the sessions and eventually stopped going. Eventually he stopped going to school, and people started to speculate that he was in a psychiatric hospital, but he was just at home spending all of his time online playing this game called Tibia. Daniel would spend hours at a time playing this game, interacting with other players. This is when Daniel would meet 12-year-old Gabriel Kuhn online. Daniel ended up living very close to Gabriel, and the two became very good friends, or at least that's what it seemed like. Gabriel set up a private server for himself and Daniel to play, and one day Gabriel had asked Daniel if he could borrow some coins from him so he could buy something from the game store. He needed 20,000 coins, which would be equivalent to $1.75. Gabriel told Daniel that he would repay him in a couple of days, so Daniel agreed to the loan. On the day that Gabriel promised to repay the coins, Daniel logged into the game and noticed that he was blocked from the server. Daniel was enraged but decided he was going to visit Gabriel at his home. Gabriel was home alone when Daniel arrived, and even though he owed him money, He didn't realize the type of rage that was filled inside of Daniel. Gabriel opened the door, welcomed him inside, hoping that he could make things right with his friend. As soon as Daniel walked inside, he immediately attacked Gabriel by beating him and essaying him. Gabriel was on the floor bleeding in pain, and Daniel was just laughing at him. Gabriel then said he was going to tell his mom what had happened, so that's when Daniel grabs a cord from Gabriel's computer and strangles him with it. He tightened the cord around Gabriel's neck until he stopped moving. At this point, Daniel assumed that Gabriel was dead, so he tried to hide his body into a crawl space, but the entrance was not wide enough. Daniel figured the best way to hide Gabriel's body would be to dismember it, so he located a saw and began sawing at his torso. Gabriel was still alive and he awoke screaming in pain. But this excited Daniel and he continued sawing at his body until it was in 2 pieces. He carved tibia symbols into Gabriel's body and tried to stuff his body into that same crawl space, but it still didn't fit. Daniel ended up leaving Gabriel's body in the hallway and fled the home, and Gabriel's brother is the one who discovered his body. Police questioned Daniel as soon as they learned about their online argument, and Daniel admitted to everything and told them all of the details. Brazilian authorities charged Daniel as a juvenile, and he was sentenced to 3 years at a juvenile facility. In 2010, Daniel was released from that facility.
Things they don't teach you in the U.S. school system. 1. Japanese internment camps in World War II. 120,000 Japanese Americans forced into prison camps. 2. Operation Condor. In the 70s and 80s, U.S.-backed dictatorships in Latin America kidnapped, tortured, and disappeared thousands. 3. Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Until 1972, black men were denied treatment so doctors could study the disease. But I sure am glad that I know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Want to learn about the biological effects of cannibalism? You've come to the right place. Welcome to another episode of Could That Kill Me? Disclaimer, this is solely for educational purposes. Please do not use any of these methods to do anything illegal on my behalf. Let's say you take pride in your carnivorous nature, and you take such pride that at some point you get bored with the rest of the animals in the animal kingdom and you want to go after none other than your friends themselves. Well, if that's the case, congratulations, you might be eligible for a deadly condition called Kuru disease. Kuru disease is a prion disease that is transmitted only through the act of cannibalism. This disease is very well known to be widely transmitted amongst those called the Four people, which is a native tribe in Papua New Guinea. And the reason Kuru disease is highly transmitted amongst the Four people is because they practice ritualistic endocannibalism, which is basically just the act of eating the brain tissue of your loved ones after they pass away. Now, whenever it comes to the transmission of this condition, Kuru disease is transmitted through these things called prions. For a little explanation, in order for your body to naturally do its day-to-day activities, it needs to synthesize different proteins, and those proteins need to be folded in a certain way in order to perform properly. However, if those proteins are misfolded, that is whenever they form something called a prion, also known as a misfolded protein. Now, not all prions are bad for you. In fact, there are a lot of prions in your body that are actually healthy and help with your day-to-day activities. But then there are some prions, like the prions that cause Kuru disease, that can kill you. And whenever you're eating the brain tissue of someone who has those prions in their brain tissue, those prions from them are then transmitted into your body, causing your proteins to then misfold in turn, specifically causing your brain proteins to misfold, which then results in neurodegeneration. And this can lead to early symptoms of tremors, slurred speech, and inability to walk, and then later symptoms like, fatality. As it's important to note that this disease is not only incurable, but also 100% fatal. So yeah, I just wouldn't eat one of your relatives if I were you. Not the best idea for your health.
One of the bigger ongoing mysteries in neuroscience is whether adult brains can actually create brand new nerve cells, a process called neurogenesis. And honestly, the journey to figure this out has been pretty wild. The first clue of neurogenesis was back in the 60s when researchers at MIT observed neurons dividing in the brains of adult rats. But renowned scientists at the time shut this idea down as it was just too hard to believe. It wasn't until the 1980s that researchers found solid evidence of neurogenesis happening in adult human brains, particularly in the hippocampus, the region responsible for learning and memory. Even then, the scientific community remained divided on whether this was actually occurring. But the real game changer came this past July when a team at Sweden's Karolinska Institute made a breakthrough discovery. They found molecular signatures of neural progenitor cells, basically the precursors to new neurons present in human brains throughout our entire lifespan, from when we're babies into old age. This is the strongest evidence yet that our brains continue producing new cells well into adulthood. Now researchers are racing to understand what these developing nerve cells are actually doing and whether we can harness this process to treat neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. Some are even exploring whether targeting neurogenesis could help with psychiatric conditions like PTSD. What this all means is that your brain might be far more adaptable and self-renewing than we ever thought possible, and we're just beginning to understand what that could mean for treating brain disorders and enhancing cognitive.
We are on the brink of international uproar. Israel has begun intercepting the global Samud flotilla tonight. We are starting to see those videos from activists aboard like Greta Thunberg saying, if you're watching this, I have been abducted by the IDF. Italy is already beginning to shut down. Italian unions and protesters kept their promise to block everything if any harm was made to the global Samud flotilla. Italy's largest unions have announced a nationwide general strike on Friday. Protests and road blockades have erupted in several European countries, including Italy, Germany, Greece, Spain, Sweden, and Belgium. Remember, it is like the middle of the night. It's already 8 p.m. where I am on the east coast of the US, so it's night there. We expect more in the morning. There is a 24/7 live stream of the flotilla that you can actually watch on YouTube. There's 35k watching right now. I have linked this live stream in my bio, but you can also just look up Global Samud Flotilla on YouTube. And the Global Samud Flotilla Instagram, which has gained 500,000 followers in the past couple days, you should be one of them, is posting extremely frequent updates with video footage of the interceptions by the IDF, as well as information about every single person that has been abducted so far, including their nationality, so that the right people, aka Americans, when an American gets abducted, can start contacting our government, saying, hey government, it's your job to protect your citizens. What are you going to do about the fact that our people are getting abducted by the IDF while it also commits G-slide in Gaza? Make sure you're following people that are bringing you frequent updates about this, because there are obviously efforts to censor this information on certain media platforms, so it might take some effort from you to manually make sure that your algorithm is serving you the correct news about this. I'll be back with more soon.
discover signs of ancient life on Mars. Last year, the Perseverance rover took a sample from a dried up riverbed in this crater, because once upon a time, it had water. First, they found clay and silt, which if you want to find life is a really good sign, because on Earth, clay is really good at preserving fossils because it's super fine, and that can help block oxygen and decay. The clay is rich in carbon, sulfur, phosphorus, and iron, which is quite a few of the main basic ingredients of life. Then they found these leopard spots, which carry signatures of vivianite and greigite. Vivianite can be found in bogs and near decaying organic matter. Your body goes through a series of complex chemical reactions, using things you know, like oxygen and calcium, but also phosphorus, which is not only in rocks, but moonlights as the backbone of your DNA.
Or just dirt that pays bills.
The vivianite and greigite could have been formed by reactions between organic matter and the ingredients left in this sediment. While those reactions usually happen because microbes use it to fuel their metabolism, they can also be made without life under really high temperatures. But the rocks don't show signs of experiencing temperatures like that. Another interesting aspect of this is the sample is pretty young. Scientists expected life to have existed much longer ago than that. So this could suggest that it was on Mars for much longer than we thought. NASA is still referring to all this as a potential biosignature rather than saying, yeah, life was there, because we actually have a procedure.
See all this stuff that they're saying that they're finding, but they're not on Mars. They're on some island. They get caught out there. The landmass, the rocks, everything is to the T identical. I want to say and believe that maybe the majority is CGI, and because they do all those mistakes, some of it, small some of it, is true, and this is true. You make your call, though.
For this, the most important of which will be bringing back that sample to Earth so that we can further study it. Unfortunately, those plans might be canceled because of the White House's recent budget proposal. So it may be a while longer until we can find evidence of how this was once like this.
So you are saying the ocean is the real outer space and the concept of ocean floor is a lie?
There was this eccentric engineer, Dr. Elias Navarro, right? He was convinced the ocean floor was a lie, nothing more than a cover-up. A few years ago, he designed this insane deep-sea craft. We're talking a hull made from next-gen alloy, pressure-bending armor tech that technically doesn't even exist on record. The guy was relentless. He believed the deepest trenches weren't just unexplored, they were kept hidden. So, he dives into the Mariana Trench loaded with scanners, live stream rigs, and experimental sensors. The deeper he went, the stranger it got. Down there, he didn't find fish, not corals. Nothing in any marine biology archives. He saw moving shadows, entities that float like smoke underwater. And instead of striking the seabed, there was no bottom, just a spiraling abyss pulling downward. And Navarro, he didn't pull back, he went straight in. When he resurfaced, this wasn't Earth anymore. He described a realm, no map charts, a place satellites can't see.
Odds are that you think it's 2025 right now, but it actually might be the 1700s. I'm gonna tell you how. It's based on a theory called the phantom time hypothesis, and it argues that about 300 years of history never happened. So the guy who came up with this idea was a German historian named Herbert Illig. And basically what he says is that Holy Roman Emperor Otto III and Pope Sylvester II came together and rewrote time basically to make it seem like Otto ruled during the year 1000. For context, the year 1000 was supposed to be a prophetic year, a sacred year, the big one. And get this, there's evidence. There's the calendar problem. The Julian calendar was off by 11 minutes. Over the centuries, that should have stacked up to a 13-day drift. But another pope supposedly fixed the calendar in the 1500s, and it accounted for 10 days. So where did the other 3 days go? That 3 days equals the 300 years. The second part is the Dark Ages. We have no history from that period of time, specifically the 640 to 980. There's few inventions, very little art, and not very many records. So it's literally like Europe just hit pause for 300 years. And then there's the stars. Literally, the stars. Supposedly there were eclipses and things that happened in those years, but none of it lines up with where the moon and the sun should have been. Almost like those events never happened. Now, mainstream historians say that this is nonsense. There's carbon dating, there's tree rings, there's evidence against, there's evidence for. What if those 300 years never actually happened and we're not in 2025? We're in the 1700s.
Anybody want to tell me why there's a rocket in this 1633 painting? Yes, from 1633. Look, that's a rocket. Or how about this Dutch painter, dude? The Baptism of Christ. What's that right there? That's kind of strange looking, isn't it? Huh? This one right here is 1327, dude.
I believe all these paintings have what they've seen. Best way they can recreate it.
It's like 700 years ago. And look right here. What are these little dudes right here doing? They're at the top left and top right. What's going on with that, man? I mean, really and truly, I've got a couple more I want to show y'all. Hold on one second. Or the 15th century Madonna. What's that over Mary's shoulder? Look right there. There's an enlarged, but if you also look, before you try to dismiss it, what's this homeboy right here? Look, and his little dog. He's doing like this. The dog's like this. Somebody explain that one to me. I mean, how are all these paintings and Christian paintings? What's up with that? There's got to be more to this. There's just got to be. This one obviously isn't a Christian painting, I know, but it's a daggum rocket, man. So let's look around on this picture. Let's see what we can find. Look, little dudes right there. I mean, that 1600s, man. I mean, I know fireworks. That's not a firework in my opinion. Come on, man. What's really going on?
Absolutely none of the NASA worshippers are ready for this one. So in 1962, 3 men escaped from Alcatraz without a trace, completely vanished from one of the highest security and hardest to escape prisons in America. They just gone. And then 7 years later, these 3 men land on the moon, stepping onto the world stage. Now, is it just me, or do these faces look eerily similar? Maybe you guys don't see it yet, but let me show you. Here are the 3 escapees from Alcatraz prison that got away with life vests, apparently. And here's the 3 men that landed on the moon: Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, and Neil Armstrong. They couldn't possibly all be a match, right? They couldn't all be the same people. Let's start with Neil, though. Let's see the overlay on Neil here. Whoa. Damn. That is shockingly the exact same facial features. What a striking coincidence. Have a look at Michael Collins now. Damn. I mean, maybe the nose. Nope, it's looking. Whoa. Yeah. Very interesting stuff, guys. Again, entertainment purposes only here. This is strictly for entertainment. Let's have a look at Buzz Aldrin here. The guy that says that we never went to the moon, by the way. He won't admit it. He says that we never went. Let's overlay the face. Damn. You know when children ask him why we haven't been to the moon, and he's like, because we didn't go. We haven't gone to the moon. And here these men are heroes, still standing vindicated. But the eyes are useless when the mind is blind. NASA believers. Bah.
What would happen if you consumed apple cider vinegar every single day for 14 days? Your blood sugar is going to be much better because apple cider vinegar stabilizes that hormone insulin, which also means you'll probably lose more weight and have less of a fatty liver, more energy, more cognitive power, like better focus and better concentration. And you'll be in a better mood because if your blood sugar is better, you're going to be more stable mentally. On top of all that, because apple cider vinegar is an acid, it's going to help you digest. If you had bloating or indigestion, that will be much improved.
I'm going to claim something very bold. I'm one of the only people who's actually figured out what at least one alleged UFO crash part is for. It's known as the Art part. You know Art Bell, Coast to Coast AM? Yeah. Linda Moulton Howe also had this. So I got a fragment that's allegedly from New Mexico from 1947. And I've been doing material analysis on it. And I'm going to publish a paper on it, hopefully by the end of this year or next year. Then I'm going to print out that paper, and I want to shove it up the ass or down the throat of every single skeptic and debunker, because we found that that material is anomalous and discovered that the Arrow report on this material was a lie. It was a whitewash. Wow. They didn't list half of the elements in it. They didn't list any of the interesting isotopic configurations. Nothing. Gary Nolan knows this. A few people know this who have pieces of the mother sample. There was a big sample. I only got a fragment of it. I can determine whether something is terrestrial or extraterrestrial.
How?
By the isotopic ratio.
Okay.
So everything is made of elements, and each of those elements has isotopes, but the isotopic ratios are unique to different planets, different parts of the galaxy. Still doesn't conclusively prove something's extraterrestrial, because the skeptic could always say, oh, it was part of a nuclear test and it changed the isotopic composition. Sure.
Right.
But what I can demonstrate is whether something is weird. I know that's very vague, but I can demonstrate whether something's weird, whether it's anomalous, or whether it's boring. Like, oh, this is just a hunk of aluminum.
The Grand Canyon is not just an American sightseeing location. There are strange and dark secrets that lie within. Some have even encountered a gateway to a hidden world. In 1909, the Arizona Gazette published an article about an expedition funded by the Smithsonian. This expedition was led by a man named G.E. Kincaid, and he discovered an ancient underground city within the Grand Canyon. But here is where it gets interesting. This city was filled with artifacts from ancient Egypt, hieroglyphs, statues, and even a pyramid. How did ancient Egyptian relics end up in Arizona over 5,000 years ago? Is it possible that they had access to flight? But it gets even stranger. The Smithsonian seized all the artifacts and shut down any further exploration, which led to 90% of the Grand Canyon being restricted till this day. The canyon is home to numerous hidden caves and tunnels, many holding ancient treasures and technologies. Many adventurers used to report seeing strange lights and sounds coming from these depths. The Hopi tribe, a tribe native to the region, speak of sacred underground cities known as the Sipapu. These cities are believed to be gateways to the underworld, holding powerful energies that should never be disturbed. All this makes us wonder, what else is hiding in the Grand Canyon?
I cannot even make this up, y'all.
It's bullshit how we can't investigate our own country, you know. Anytime there's something good, the Smithsonian comes and takes it, or the government says you can't go there. You know, it's crazy.
The IDF right now is literally hosing down the Greta Squad. I'm not even kidding. You can see it here, you can see more up here, and people all over the world are literally in the streets rising up. I mean, look at this right here. That's Netanyahu's window and the way they're looking out the window. Turkey even released a memo calling it terrorism, but it gets even crazier. Because while we're seeing this uprising all over the world right now, did you know that the president just allowed Ukraine to use our intelligence for long-range strikes into Russia, while everybody is completely preoccupied? Wild. I made that video earlier and nobody seemed to get it. Again, I ask you, why is Greta down there in the middle of the ocean? By the way, sorry, my neighbor's dog will not shut up. I have to record all my future videos in the studio. Now again though, why is she there? And who put her there? Again, what they're doing is good, but what's the heart posture? Why are they really out there? Do you get what I'm trying to tell you? There is a reason she's there, and she's not there on her own behalf. And while the IDF floods them out, by the way, they're in international waters. They're literally allowed to be where they are. We have, again, all the planes from the US heading to the Middle East. The last time we saw this was when Iran got attacked.
It's Iran.
Shut up. And just wait until Putin responds about giving Ukraine intelligence for long-range strikes into their country. Russian Foreign Minister already came out and said that they were at war with NATO. That was well before any intelligence sharing. And remember, Hamas has 48 hours, probably like what, 30 hours at this point, to take the deal. Otherwise, the president's going to back that other country. And again, the Red October thing, weird. It's also weird because you can see from my older videos last month that it's been on my mind for some reason in Red October, and now it's trending on Twitter, just all weird.
Chris Farley, Tim Dillon, Chris Farley, Tim Dillon, Tim Dillon wearing black, hugging a sheep, Chris Farley, Chris Farley, Tim Dillon, Chris Farley, Tim Dillon. Even their chubby little chins line up, but they don't just line up here, they line up there, with a little crevice in the exact same spot. And guess what? Do you think maybe their faces fit pretty well? Like perfectly symmetrical down to chin and cleft. And even how that eyebrow is in the exact same alignment with the mouth and the nose. And even the hairline, if you just took Chris's hair back. What an amazing coincidence. You know, like the coincidence that he died at 33, and I keep telling people they rub 33 in our nose. And not only do they rub 33 in our nose, but also, you know, the other symbols as well. You know what else they just happen to have in common? You'll never guess who just hired Tim Dillon.
Also, I've just been hired at SNL.
But I mean, so what that they're both large-bodied comedians that work for SNL and have almost exact same teeth. If you just straighten that one out a little bit and took a little off that one, it's not like there's anything else that would identify them as the exact same person, like holes in their chins in the exact same spot, not to mention that exact crevice in the exact same spot of their chin. No, I mean, that doesn't exist. Just like there's no evidence of Chris Farley being at his own Hollywood Star Walk of Fame induction 11 years after he died. That couldn't possibly be him. I mean, they would never rub it in our face by having him go to his own induction when he's supposedly dead, right? That's got to be his dad, right? Oh yeah, Chris's father, Tom Sr., was at the Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony in 2007. I got that wrong. Or did I? How was he there in 2007 when he, Tom Farley Sr., died in 1999? Did I catch Google in a lie covering something? I think I did. And if you're confused by all this, I don't blame you. But I just did a 10-minute video explaining it all in my subs area because it's too much information overload for people who aren't fully awake. But of course, all this is for entertainment purposes. I'm sure that their hand symbolism and him dying at 33 and them having the exact same teeth and butt chin and facial alignment down to the eyebrows and looking so much alike and having the same holes in their chin and him hugging a sheep wearing black in one of Chris's most famous movies, being Black Sheep, is all just a coincidence. Entertainment only. Go check out the 6-minute longer version. It's well worth the $2. Entertainment only. Have a great day.
Did you hear about the phone that was discovered after filming this and the man who filmed it, Brian Soderford, is missing? Look, it's filming these eyes. He was in the woods. And the scientific experts that have looked at this and the forensicers said that it isn't a wolf. As they zoomed in, they said that they saw a creature critter that looked more human-esque, like a golem character. But you can see here he's quite spooked. Brian's filming that bird bat, and then he comes across this castle. They can't find it. This happened just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and no one knows what this castle is. They've never seen it before. And so if anybody's seen the castle, they're asking people to report it. The video does continue, and he does go inside the castle. But the crazy thing is they found the phone near his car at the trailhead, but Brian is missing. And so if anybody has any information about this, if you notice any clues in this video, please DM me. Let me know. I'll pass it on to the authorities. Let's find Brian.
Lucifer is not in the Bible, even though Lucifer doesn't appear at all in most modern translations of the Bible. And it shows up one time in an old version, the King James Bible, which was translated in 1611 from Latin. See, in Isaiah 14:12, it does say, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning." Lucifer is Latin, not Hebrew, and the original word in that verse is Hallel, meaning morning star or shining one. And Lucifer isn't even a name. You see, it's not a person. It refers to the planet Venus in the morning, hence morning star. But what if I told you the same word was also used to describe Jesus? Check out 2 Peter 1:19. It says, "And so we have the prophetic word confirmed, which you do well to heed as a light that shines in a dark place until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts." The morning star rises in your hearts refers to Jesus. Well, guess what? The Latin translation, the one Jerome wrote, says right here, Lucifer. So Lucifer as a fallen angel is not originally in scripture. That means a huge piece of what we think is Satan's origin story is totally made up and built on a mistranslation of literally one word.
So did y'all know that on July 21st, 1969, that the eagle has landed? You know the one where it says one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind? That same day, this picture was taken and put in the newspaper. Just a quick reminder that it took 3 days to get back from the moon, and pictures had to be developed back in the 1960s.
People who really control the world don't want you to wake up.
I don't know about you, but I no longer want to live in this world that asks for so much and gives so little in return. Groceries feel like a luxury. 9 to 5, climb the corporate ladder and stare at a screen all day.
The rat race.
Bullshit. 2 weeks off a year. Bullshit. White picket fence dream. Bullshit. Retirement age 65, if you even make it that far.
Yep.
And if you do, you'll just spend your pension on medical care.
Yep.
Yeah, all that's true. I'm going to stop the video right now. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to make more. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And this is me, Fallen Angels, going out.